The price will be very high because there's no Bitcoin available.
I'm going to give you a pill. You can take it if you want. But if you take it, this might make a little bit more sense to you.
In that scenario, I'm a supervillain to the fiat world.
Yeah, it should only take 5 minutes. The whole selling point of Bitcoin, one of them is that it's quick.
Because once you have it, you're going to pay attention to it.
This is not cool. People should be buying their own Bitcoin. You shouldn't be holding their hand.
I want to buy $100,000 worth of Bitcoin.
It's Mandana.
And Ian.
Welcome to Flirting with Bitcoin.
Season 3.
That's right. 3 years ago, I tricked Ian into a weekly date night.
I let you trick me so I could teach you about Bitcoin.
Well, it worked. I'm very excited for the halving.
You should be. Bitcoin's about to do what Bitcoin's about to do.
Ooh, okay then. Keon, can we start the show?
Okay.
Let's go.
I got 99 problems.
But a bit ain't one.
It's our 99th episode.
Brr, 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 brr.
Hey, Ian.
Hey, Mandana.
You've been quite the flirt lately.
Have I?
Oh, don't act so innocent.
I'm a man of honor.
That's true. I should clarify that you've been helping people flirt with Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay, yes, this is true.
You've become a Bitcoin broker of sorts.
That's slowly becoming the most appropriate way to describe it, yes.
And you can't be the only person in this situation, when you're trying to orange pill someone.
Yeah, definitely I'm not the only person. I think the way that I'm going about it is the right way.
Let's break it down for me today. I want to make sure it's above board.
Everything I do is legal. Your boy is innocent.
Okay. I'm going to stop with the accusations and let you explain yourself. But first, what time is it, babe?
The current time is 8:49:316, and we're approximately 1,495 blocks since our last recording.
It's time for the Satoshi Price Index, brought to you by data from pricedinbitcoin21.com. Hey, Ian, if I gave you $1, how many acres could I get on sunny Bitcoin Island today?
Today, you could get 1,631 acres, aka Satoshis, on sunny Bitcoin Island.
Is this a dip?
At the time of recording, the price of Bitcoin is $61,000, so we're down a little bit, yeah. Which means the Satoshi Price Index is up.
Uh-oh. How up?
About 8%.
That's kind of significant.
We're up 100% over a year.
You're right.
Or down 100% over a year. So these price movements on a week-to-week basis are not super important.
Yeah, I understand.
When you run up from 30 to 60, what's an 8% dip in a week?
It's true, but let's say I want to go to the grocery store and I want to pay in Bitcoin. What's going on there?
You can't.
Yes.
You can't. But if you were to think in a Bitcoin mindset and you were to price all of your commodities in Bitcoin, everything has gone up about 8% since our last recording. So eggs are 5,200 Satoshis for a dozen. Beef is 5,600 Satoshis for a kilogram. Gas is 3,800 Satoshis for a gallon. Cheese is 3,100 Satoshis for a pound. And corn is 7,000 Satoshis for a bushel. And while you can't get these at the grocery store, gold is back above 3 million Satoshis an ounce. And houses are back above 700 million Satoshis for a house. So 7 Bitcoin for a house. We were at 6. Now we're back at 7.
Still feels like a steal.
It is a steal. It is. Every time I say that number, that's just wild, because if the math plays out in 10 years, it's going to at least be a tenth of that.
That's wild.
I know. And we'll be saying it like it's normal then. It's only 70 million sats for a house.
So this is our 99th episode. So which episode will that be 10 years from now? Are we still doing this pod 10 years from now?
Maybe. It'll probably change into something else. I don't think it'll be me teaching you about Bitcoin.
It'll be me teaching you about what?
It might be you teaching Keon about Bitcoin.
Aww.
That might be what this morphs into. This might end up as Keon's podcast. I'm just holding it for him.
It could be something like raising in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't need to flirt with your child. They already love you.
It's a brand. He can assume the brand. He's a cute kid.
He's a real cute kid.
He can flirt with it. In 10 years, who knows? Who knows what we're going to be talking about when it comes to Bitcoin?
Only Satoshi knows. 99th episode in. I want to rewind to like the first few episodes that we put out. A lot of our friends jumped in, listened to it, and a conversation that I had then, and I continue to have once in a while with my friends who do not listen to the pod, but want in on Bitcoin is, can I just give Ian the money and he do it?
Yeah, I get that a lot.
You
also.
get that question a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
And our general response has been, no, you need to learn this for yourself. It's important. That's why we have this podcast. You can listen to us once a week, just check in, stay in the know. But having Bitcoin is about personal responsibility.
That probably wasn't my answer I was giving when we started the podcast, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Personal responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, I would give them the, the referral link for Strike and then call it a day. But those people still have not gotten into Bitcoin in the way that we would have expected since they were interested right at the launch of our podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I have some suspicion as to why that is, but most of those people have not purchased Bitcoin. No.
What's your suspicion?
I heard a really good quote this morning, actually, when I was dropping Keon off. It was Michael Saylor, and he said, most people by the time they hit 25, 30, they think they are no longer a student, that they don't have to learn. There's nothing new for them to learn. Like, I went to school, I got my degree,
absolutely.
I'm good. And
25 is generous.
And Bitcoin kind of sets you in this position of, no, there's something you don't understand at all, and you actually need to study it like you would have in school if someone had told you there's going to be a grade. And the grade you'll get is basically, well, how much Bitcoin can you get before it gets out of reach for you?
And can you securely store it?
Well, if you study it, then that'll be part of the studying, right? So I think a lot of people just don't have time or don't want to study something. They don't listen to the podcast. So I can say this freely because I know they're not going to hear it. And that's just the state of affairs. But I do think that the offer to, like, can I just give you the money and you do it for me? I was less inclined to do that for people in the past because I was still like kind of understanding and learning for myself, number one. And number two, like, we started this podcast. It was the options for self-custody weren't as elegant as they are today. And so I feel confident with referring people to a specific device now and saying, like, you can't mess this up.
You feel that confident to say it in that way?
I feel like I can hand someone a bit key and they would actively have to try to lose their Bitcoin to lose their Bitcoin.
So let's take a step back before we talk about BitKey. Can you explain, before there was BitKey, what were you doing when people would say, can I just give you the money and you buy it?
I would just say no.
But you did set up wallets for some people.
I never set up a wallet for anybody.
Never?
Mm-mm. Every wallet that was set up was me maybe walking you through how to do it, but I never did that for anybody.
All right, explain that experience.
I mean, we talked about it on the pod. One of my friends, we were talking one day and he mentioned that he had bought some Bitcoin on Robinhood. And I was like, well, you don't have Bitcoin. And so I slowly walked him through it, literally over text message, like how to get his Bitcoin off of that. Don't use Robinhood, use this instead, right? I did all that over the phone, whether through text or like on the phone with him, but I didn't do any of that for him. Like, he did that himself.
I see.
And I just explained and reiterated the importance of those 12 words. But with BitKey, I could literally tell someone, buy it from the website, get it shipped to them, and just do what it says. If you want to sit in front of me and we can do it together, that's fine. But they've made it pretty simple. And when I set it up the first time for, I think it was it your dad? Who did I give the first one to?
Your dad?
I think I gave it to your dad first. But forget that. The first one was for Keon.
Mm-hmm.
So I set it up. We bought one just to have one. And I set up all of Keon's like Noru's presents and stuff to go there. And that was pretty simple, but I didn't use it again and I'm pretty knowledgeable. But then I set it up for either your dad or my dad, and like walking through that and seeing how simple it was for them, I was like, oh, this is the way to go.
So what's BitKey?
Yeah, so for the record, like, this is not a commercial for BitKey. Like, they're not paying us to do this or talk about it. But BitKey is a signing device, a hardware device.
It's cold storage.
I'm just going to say yes. The lingo is changing a little bit. Yes, it is what you would call a cold storage device. But the lingo is changing to be called a signing device. Like, this is what you sign transactions with. It's just something that I've noticed when I'm like,
Interesting.
but when I'm explaining it to people, I keep reiterating, like, your Bitcoin is not on this device. So don't feel terrified about losing it. When I say that, people get confused. And so I have to explain, like, the Bitcoin isn't on this device. The thing that controls and can move the Bitcoin is on this device, but it's other places and you won't lose it. And that's why this device and this bit key is so resilient, is that you would actively have to try to lose at least one thing, your cell phone, that you try every day not to lose. So
So this is new technology in Bitcoin.
it's not new technology. It's just it's made by Block, which is Jack Dorsey's company. Jack Dorsey is a big Bitcoiner. He's the creator of Cash App. He's the creator of Twitter. And this is the first device that's had like a major corporate entity behind it doing like R&D and design and usability, right? UX and all that fun stuff. Like there's a product life cycle that's gone into this device. I'm not saying that to like say that the cold card isn't good or that the other sign devices are out there aren't good, but let's be honest, Jack Dorsey has a lot more money than CoinKite.
Right.
And not Jack Dorsey himself, but the company, the entity that makes these devices. They have a lot more money, a lot more resources behind them. So you end up with the BitKey, which is, it's kind of sexy.
Ah, the truth comes out. You're attracted to it.
Yeah, you know me.
What a flirt.
So yeah, like the BitKey is just a very elegant device that I feel safe giving to my dad who's in his 70s, your dad, your aunt and uncle. Like I feel confident giving this to older people in a way that I would not feel comfortable giving them a cold card.
That's interesting.
And like I said, like during the setup, you never write down 12 words, which is weird at first. But then once you dig into how it works, it's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that's one of the problems with all of this is you end up with this piece of paper with 12 words on it and you tell everyone, protect this with your life.
Yeah.
Or hammer it into steel washers and then protect that with your life, right? So
why doesn't this need the 12 words?
It's not that it doesn't need it. The 12 words still exist. It's just not part of the process. And that's the beauty of it. If you want those 12 words, you can go get those 12 words, but you don't want those 12 words. You don't want anyone to be able to get those 12 words. And if you were to lose your phone and still have the device, you haven't lost your Bitcoin. If you lose the device and you haven't lost your phone, you haven't lost your Bitcoin. And you can set up people to be like your trusted contacts where they can help you. Help is a relative term, but they can help prove, yes, that is Ian. And yes, he did lose the device. And so, yes, please help him get his stuff back. And so everybody that I've helped set up, like I'm that person for them. So if your dad or my dad or whoever were to lose their phone, which is the only thing they better lose, they should never lose the BitKey because that should just be sitting somewhere in a safe, right? Mm-hmm. But if you lose your phone and you're like, oh, how do I get that back? It's not a big deal. Whereas with a cold card, since there's no phone part to it, the only thing you could lose is the cold card and or your 12 words. And I can't help you unless you gave me a copy.
And with BitKey, there's an app that has a friendly interface. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It just shows you, how much Bitcoin you have in dollar terms. I think you can pick other currencies, but that's all it does. It just shows you the Bitcoin that you have. And a lot of the other apps, like for example, I have Blue Wallet, right? That's another software phone wallet that we recommend. Blue Wallet lets me like add a bunch of different wallets, a bunch of different Bitcoin wallets into it. You can have, I think, up to like 20 different Bitcoin wallets. You can have Lightning wallets. You can have a whole bunch of stuff in there. BitKey is just, nope, I'm just a visual representation of that device that has no screen on it. Right. So it's very simple. It's very straightforward. And it only really shows you what you need to know. So it's a good entry device for people like my dad or your dad or older people who, very similar to telling someone to go onto Coinbase and buy Bitcoin and you basically walk them into a casino. Mm-hmm. Why? No, just use Strike. It does one thing. Right. BitKey is kind of that for hardware. It's like you don't need to store a bunch of different coins. You don't need to do all this other stuff. You just need to hold your own Bitcoin. And that's all it does.
So going back to, can I just give Ian the money and he'd do it? Now that there's BitKey, how are you approaching that situation when someone that you have a personal relationship with asks you that?
I'm already set up to buy Bitcoin, right? Like I have a Strike account, I have a River account, I have a Cash App account, and probably some other places. I've done KYC all over the place. Like I can buy Bitcoin from like 4 or 5 different places.
What a flex.
Not a flex. It's just the nature of me being a Bitcoiner for the last like 5 or 6 years. And so a lot of people who are like, can I just give you the money and you do it for me? My initial reaction back in the day was, well, let me set you up with Strike or River or whatever, and you can buy it yourself, and then I'll show you how to move it off. But in my last interaction, I realized like I can just buy it for you. There's no number that you can probably come to me with, especially if you're new to Bitcoin. You're not going to come to me with like $100,000 and say, I want to buy $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. You're going to want to dip your toes in or whatever. And so with BitKey, it's like, well, let me just get the device for you. You can come over, you can sit at my table, you tell me how much you want to buy. I'll send it right to your device while you're sitting here. And then, you can pay me back. Right. And so that simplicity kind of removed one of the barriers to entry, which is if I try to get someone set up on Strike, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, the KYC bugs out.
The KYC, I have not been able to get certain people through KYC in the last couple of times. Same thing with Cash App. And I haven't tried River, but my guess is River is going to have the same problem. And so because of that KYC aspect, it tends to always throw like this massive friction point into their first acquisition of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it should only take 5 minutes. The whole like selling point of Bitcoin, one of them is that it's quick.
The Bitcoin transaction is quick. It's all the infrastructure around that transaction that slows it down. And nobody wants to hear that, really. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to understand why it's happening. And I try to like explain it to them as it's happening. And I just always, the last couple of times I've had my fingers crossed being like, please work this time. And it never does. So what I decided was like, well, if I do it this new way where like I'll just buy it in my own account, or I probably already have it in my own account in some way, and just send it to you and you can just pay me back. Right? There's no big deal. That seems to have gotten more people off of Zero than trying to get them to install a new app on their phone and understand all that stuff. So if the goal is to get people to have a little bit of Bitcoin so that they can start understanding what it is and start paying attention to it, right? Because once you have it, you're going to pay attention to it. Right? Like once you have that app on your phone, you're going to open it up at least once a week. It's impossible. Or you'll see something in the news.
And you'll just go check.
And you'll go check, right? Once you have some of it, then your brain has to start analyzing and thinking about like, well, what did I just buy? I didn't want to miss out, but what am I not missing out on? That's the most important thing to me when someone says, I want to buy Bitcoin now. So you kind of said like a Bitcoin broker, like not really a broker. I'm not doing this to make money off of friends and family, but there are some costs associated with me buying the Bitcoin in general. So as long as they're willing to, let me pass that cost on to them, there's a chance to make some money in that.
Oh, we can make some money off of this? All right, I got some more questions. Hey, it's Mandana. We're in season 3, The Having, and I'm making sure we drop a new episode every week. We are dreaming big for flirting with Bitcoin, and the only thing standing in our way is time and money. Let me be transparent and talk real numbers. Through value for value, our listeners directly paid us 100,000 sats in season 1. Season 2, we made 1 million sats. Of course, now we gotta see if we can 10x again and reach 10 million sats this season. #relationship goals. If we earn 10 million sats from the work we put into this podcast, it'll be the sign that one of us can do this part-time, maybe even full-time. Send us Bitcoin or shop our merch store. It all helps with the goal. You can also give us an old school shout out on social, listen to us on your favorite podcasting 2.0 app, or make and share clips of the show. Your support in any form is value we appreciate. Go to flirtingwithbitcoin.com/support and let's experience value for value together. But I am a little serious when I say Bitcoin broker and maybe getting paid to do that service, because you put a lot of man hours, Ian hours into becoming a Bitcoiner, getting to that point where you feel like the conviction to tell other people to buy Bitcoin, and now to buy people Bitcoin and store it for them or teach them how to store it for them, and like this hand-holding process. How did you get to this point where you felt like, yes, I can do this for someone else?
I mean, the final piece of the puzzle was the BitKey. So yeah, over the past couple of years since we've had the podcast, and I've, when we talk about this stuff, I obviously have to think about it before I talk. I can't just, vamp. And I've always tried to like figure out in my head, like, how would I do this for someone if I had to do it? And so, your dad, your sister, my dad, I think one of my aunts, one of my uncles, right? Like I've done this kind of work in various shapes and forms. And now I kind of see like, okay, here's how I can do it in an effective manner. I'm not saying they won't ever learn all the stuff to be like a quote unquote Bitcoiner, but it's probably going to take them a little bit longer and they're going to need to have their hand held a little bit longer. And I don't want them to miss out on Bitcoin just because they're an adult and have things going on, right? Like,
or they're overwhelmed or for whatever reason. But I think some Bitcoiners would say that this is not cool. People should be buying their own Bitcoin. You shouldn't be holding their hand. You shouldn't know how they're storing it.
I don't think that's really the case. I mean, I'm sure that you could find somebody who would say that. I think the bigger issue is, for example, I don't know what the official term is, but I call it like drive-by orange pilling, where like you go into a restaurant and you like convince your waiter to like let you tip them in Bitcoin and then you never see that person again.
Mm-hmm.
I have more issue with that. You possibly just cost that person money because they might lose the money you gave them and they lost the time and you're not really going to be there to hold their hand. With the people that I've done this with so far, it's like, if you need anything, just call me. You're not going to give the waiter at a restaurant your number.
I feel like you might.
I wouldn't. But, like I have a podcast. You can listen to my podcast. I have social media. You can reach out to me on social media. But when it comes to friends and family, like you just call me, right? And so like when your uncle calls, I know why he's calling, right? Like he's not calling me to ask how the weather is. And ironically, like every time he calls me, I always miss his call. I don't know how that's possible. But when I see a call from your uncle, I know what the conversation is going to be about. And so I'm ready. And, I think he's seeing it because he bought some a couple years ago. So he's seeing the price movement and he's obviously had the I should have bought more reaction that you always have after the big run up. I don't know the family dynamic as well as you do, but I think if it works for him and he tells everyone else to look into it or do it, then I'll probably have other phone calls coming sooner or later, or at, family gathering, someone pulling me to the side and asking more questions.
And the piece of it for me that I thought was interesting is that I've started going back in my mind in the conversations that I've had with people where they've said, can Ian just buy it and do it for me? And those people have not gotten into Bitcoin since. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, so should we reach out to them now and say, okay, we figured out a way that Ian is comfortable and confident that he can set you up and then you'll be set to do it yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, the goal would be that someone doesn't come to me to buy it. They just at best tell me they bought some more, right? Like that would be like ideal. But at the same time, and this is probably further down the road, but with Bitcoin, you have to think longer term than the next 6 months. It's just going to be harder and harder to come by Bitcoin. Like that's something that I don't think we talk about a lot because it's just kind of like it's always there and it's always for sale. But if this goes the way that it's looking like it's going to go, there'll be a day where, let's say Strike, right? I'm picking on Strike because I love Strike and I don't think this will happen to Strike, but I'm just going to use Strike in my example. There'll be a day where Strike has no Bitcoin, right? Like you'll go on Strike and they'll have a notification in the app that says,
no Bitcoin available for sale.
You could sell it to us, right? And the price will be very high because there's no Bitcoin available. So everybody will be bidding the price of Bitcoin up. I'll give you 100,000. I'll give you 200,000. I'll give you $1 million for a Bitcoin because I need some to sell to my people. I don't know when that day is going to happen, but it's going to happen a lot sooner than everyone thinks it's going to happen.
See, when you say that, what does that mean to me? Does that mean 6 months, a year, 10 years?
It never means 6 months.
It never means 6
months.
Does it mean 3 years?
It doesn't mean 3 years, but it definitely might be 10.
10 months?
10 years. Right? Like
I'm just trying to push it up.
The point is that right now where that's going to happen is going to be behind the scenes. You won't see it. But as I just said a second ago, there are these OTC counters, these over the desk, over the counter operations that just buy and sell Bitcoin and other things. But these OTC traders that are just like, I got 40,000 Bitcoin. You want to buy 10,000? Cool. You want to buy 10,000? Cool. And then I take the cash and then I go buy more. And like, that's what they do. They buy in bulk, right? Those guys are running out of Bitcoin.
Okay.
So those guys are going to run out of Bitcoin.
And those are Bitcoin brokers. Those are actual
Bitcoin brokers.
And what, they skim a fee up off the top?
They charge a fee. Everyone charges a fee,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to buy 10,000 Bitcoin? I'm going to charge you a fee.
Is Ian going to charge a fee?
It's not about Ian charging a fee. Point that I'm getting here is that the OTC desks are going to run out of Bitcoin at some point. It's probably going to happen this year. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin won't be available. It just means that the OTC desks are going to have very small amounts of Bitcoin. Someone's tracking it on the internet. I'll try to find it and put it in the show notes. But there's people who track how much Bitcoin does Coinbase have? How much Bitcoin do OTC desks have? How much Bitcoin does A, B, C, D, whoever? How much Bitcoin is being held by different people? And the OTC desk, the official numbers that these people come up with, is going down.
So what does that mean? So like if you're talking to someone, you're orange pilling them and they're telling you, not you, the proverbial you, can you just get me some, because I can't figure this out. Are you saying that like now's the time to kind of buckle down and help the people you love get into Bitcoin?
No.
Any means necessary?
No, what I'm saying is that what I'm doing right now is practice for the day that that happened. It's a gamble. Those trading desks, they're basically taking a gamble, right? They're going to take a fee. Cool. Whatever their fee is. But also, if they have to buy back and the price goes up, the price going up might just totally negate that fee. Whereas if the price goes down and they can buy more back as it goes down, then they kind of win doubly, right? Fundamentally, that's what I would be doing, right? That's what I'm doing right now is if someone wanted to buy Bitcoin from me a couple episodes ago when
They gave you $100.
Sure. And it was at 70. And I'm like, all right, cool. Now I'm going to DCA that $100, $1 a day and buy it back, right? It's gone from 70 to 60. So I'm going to end up with more Bitcoin than I had when I sold you that.
Just by luck.
Just by luck, right? But on a long enough timeline, there will be periods where you probably won't want to sell your Bitcoin stack to someone and buy it back DCAing because the price will be running up. But during those bear markets that we're talking about, 60, 80, 90% drawdowns, that's the time. That's the time to sell it to your family, let them get in, and then they get it at a lower price on the way down, but you're going to be set up to buy it in like a DCA fashion.
Is this something you would recommend? Because I feel like you're still gambling here.
You're missing the point. Someone who comes to me and says, here's a pile of money, will you do it for me? They are not a person that's going to DCA.
Dollar cost average.
They're dollar cost average. They are not going to set up Strike. They're not going to set up a regular buy every day, week, month out. They're not going to do it. They just have a pile of cash they want to turn into Bitcoin. For those people, you can offer a quote unquote service, which is you don't have to create another account anywhere. You don't have to install any new apps. You just have to buy a BitKey. You tell me the number, I'll send that to your Bitcoin, to your BitKey, and you let me worry about how that Bitcoin manifested itself and where it came from. You let me worry about all of that. You want to turn $5,000 into Bitcoin? Here you go. We can do it in 10 minutes. On the other side is if you have a big enough stack, like let's say like that one guy that we met at the halving party who was like, yeah, I've had it for like 10 years and my family we don't talk about it or whatever. There's going to be a point where his family starts talking about it. And it's probably going to be at the point where what I just described about Strike is probably happening, where you can't get it from everywhere. That guy can very easily just sell some to his family members.
I see.
He's not necessarily trying to make a profit. He's just trying to help his family get into the game at a price point that's reasonable without getting gouged.
And you can DCA to get your Bitcoin back.
I mean, if you've been DCAing Bitcoin for 10 years, your cost basis is so low that anything you sell to them is going to be a quote unquote profit for you. But it's more about helping them get in without throwing up all these like crazy speed bumps to just get started. And that's where the BitKey really comes into play, because everything, in my opinion, everything before BitKey was like, I'm not putting that in front of my dad. Love my dad, but no, I'm not like, no.
So I think this is really exciting because Ian, you're such a helper.
Okay.
You are. You're just such a helper. And this is the next level in being able to help people with Bitcoin.
In addition to helping them, as I said earlier, like once you have it and you start paying attention to it, then I got you. Then it's like, with your uncle, it was like, okay, here's your BitKey. You can see the app on your phone, right? It's a one-way street as far as they're concerned. It only went in. It's not coming out, right? But if you want to come out, if you want to sell it, if you want to do something else with it, just call me before you do it. That's it. I'll just make sure that you don't get scammed, you don't get robbed, you don't whatever, right? Like that's a relationship that you can't establish with BitKey, the company, or Strike, the company, or whatever, right? Like they're not offering that service. They're just offering you Would you like some Bitcoin?
Are there people that offer this service, like individual people?
I mean, there's people and there's companies that do that, but still, that's still a company.
It is still a company. Yeah.
They're still going to charge you a fee, and they're doing it because it's a job. Whereas with me, it's like, you can come sit at my kitchen table and we can talk for 3 hours if you want to. I'll do it.
Yeah, you'll gladly do it.
I will gladly do it. But none of this will make sense until you put some skin in the game.
And you're putting skin in the game with them too, a little.
I'm trying to put the confidence into them. And I'm trying to explain to them, like, it's okay if you don't understand all of this. I don't understand all of it. But you need to understand this, like you need to understand how to operate that cell phone in your hand. Because without this, in the future, go find someone who's functioning society in American society right now without a cell phone. You can't. There's places you can't even buy things without a cell phone.
Just going to a restaurant, you got to scan the menu.
There's that. That's like the most recent example. But I was thinking about, like, there was some sports stadium did like a trial run where it was only tap to pay.
Now make it Bitcoin.
But like you could tap with your cards. So a lot of cards are tap to pay, right? But when they did the announcement, everybody was like, this is crazy. Not a single complaint. There was no complaints. Everyone was like, finally.
Right.
So like we're coming into this world where you need a cell phone to be a person, which is a problem, but we can talk about that later. But Bitcoin is going to be the other part of that, where like you need to have Bitcoin to be a person. Otherwise, the fruits of your labor, when you wake up and go to work tomorrow and you get paid by that employer, if it doesn't eventually end up in Bitcoin, someone else owns your money. And that's the point where we are right now. Bitcoin is exposing that. But before Bitcoin, you couldn't really expose that to people. Everyone was just like, oh, I like the dollar better than the euro or the yen or whatever. But it's like, none of that is yours. And so I'm just trying to put the confidence into people to say, like, this is literally the only thing you can own. Everything else can be taken away from you. And I say it very clearly and straightforward. And they just kind of pause for a second. And I'm like, yeah, think about that. Your house, your car, everything that you own and ascribe to yourself as I'm wealthy, don't make a payment, don't pay the taxes.
See what happens.
The laws change, and now you have none of that stuff. Hey gang, it's Ian. Let's chat for a second. Bitcoiner or not, I know we're all feeling anxious to save more money lately. But do you want to know why you're feeling that way? It's because you're still thinking in fiat. Seeing the price of everything go up in your local currency, that's what's driving you crazy. That's where all this anxiety is coming from. Meanwhile, the reality is everything is actually getting cheaper on Bitcoin Island. And you might ask yourself, how do I get to Bitcoin Island? Simple. Bitcoin Island is just a state of mind, and you need to train your brain to think in Bitcoin. Your first training exercise is to set a Bitcoin goal using the Satoshi Savings Calculator made by yours truly. And your goal should be to always have more Bitcoin today than you did yesterday. It's literally that simple. This way, the amount of Bitcoin you have only goes up. And once you start to think in Bitcoin, over time, everything around you becomes cheaper. You'll be way more confident about the future. No more anxiety. Look, we don't need to overcomplicate this. You're still early, but you gotta be strategic. And you gotta unlearn everything they taught you about money. So go to flirtingwithbitcoin.com and train your brain to think in Bitcoin with the Satoshi Savings Calculator.
So I saw a really funny TikTok about like an hour ago, and I posted it on Nostr, which pisses off all the people on Nostr because it's TikTok. But I couldn't download the video and reshare it. But
they'll survive.
Yeah. So this person stitched someone talking about the yen basically being at almost an all-time high in comparison to the dollar, the conversion rates. And this woman stitched it and was giving advice to Americans who were planning on going to Japan in the next few years. She was saying, because of this great conversion rate for the dollar, go download this app, which is like some yen wallet. And she's saying, just convert a bunch of dollars to yen. And then whenever you come to Japan, you can just use that yen. And even if the conversion rate has gone down, like you'll still benefit. And she was saying that the conversion rates are going to be high right now because the Japanese government is keeping it high so that tourism improves in the country. So she's selling this all as like a good thing. And here's a hack. And everyone in the comments is like, how do I download this wallet? What am I supposed to do this? And I'm reading it like, okay, they're so close. But why aren't they questioning why is the Japanese government controlling the value of the yen in this way? Right? Like step one, that's hurting its own citizens to promote tourism. Step two, the instructions are very similar to what you have to do to just buy Bitcoin. Like they're so close.
There's a lot of people that are so close for different reasons. We watched that movie Dumb Money and all the GameStop people. They're so close. Even the GameStop Roaring Kitty, he's so close.
How is he not a Bitcoiner?
Because he's killing it in GameStop. He doesn't need Bitcoin. And that's the problem is if you're winning at whatever scheme or scam you've come up with, you don't think you need it. There, however, are people all over this planet that they have a need to know. They need to know how this thing works. And so they spend the time and energy to learn it. Roaring Kitty, if he ever does cash out and whatever happens afterwards, if his next move isn't Bitcoin, then he actually doesn't understand the fight he just fought.
Yeah, the fight that is being fought is one that a lot of people are on the same side of, but they don't realize what they're actually fighting.
And they've been told for over a decade that Bitcoin is for criminals and scammers and pedophiles and all the things you don't want to be labeled as, so they stay away from it.
All right, Ian, are you ready for Satoshi for your thoughts?
As ready as I always am.
So you like to call yourself a supervillain. Do you not?
That's a super interesting way to... That's not even a question, though. It's like, is it true that...
That wasn't the question.
Yeah, okay.
So knowing that you like to refer to yourself as a supervillain, in the comic book of Bitcoin, what does your supervillain do? Does it contribute to the FUD that's out there against Bitcoin, or do you push it at a different angle?
Well, I mean, I'm in that regard, okay. In that scenario, I'm a supervillain to the fiat world. In that scenario, people hold up Jerome Powell, they hold up Ben Bernanke, they hold up all these critical thinkers of how the world works as those are their heroes. And so the villain to those heroes is the guy that basically is the Lex Luthor to Superman, who's like, look, I know where you're from and I got a room full of kryptonite. If you want to fight, step in the room with me.
I still don't understand what exactly you're doing as a supervillain. What are your specific actions?
My specific actions are...
in the comic book version of this, not the actual... I get it. We have a podcast.
I mean, this is a weird question, so I don't really know how to answer it. But I will say that my character is Morpheus.
Oh.
All right? Like, my character is Morpheus. He was a villain to the Matrix and the AI and all that fun stuff, right? They're chasing him. They're chasing Neo, but they're chasing him when you first start the series of movies. And so in that regard, it's like, yeah, I'm just trying to open people's eyes to be like, hey, those heroes that you're pointing to that you claim that they know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're talking about. They've never known what they're talking about. And on top of that, there's a whole bunch of people that wrote a whole bunch of books about how those people don't know what they're talking about before those people were even talking about it.
You know, I feel like this is a role that you try to play with a lot of things. Orange pill. I don't know what other color pills we could say, but I do see
Electric Universe pill.
Yeah, I do see
Old
you
World pill.
once in a while. Even like one of the things that Ian and I go through often is I grew up in a very sheltered environment, sheltered with love. And so whenever I encounter crappy people, Ian's like, this is how most people are, right? I feel like you're constantly trying to open my eyes to the reality of humanity.
I mean, my gut reaction is usually like, yeah, this is how people are. But I think that there's a more nuanced way to say that, which is people are trying to survive and they don't care about your survival. They need to survive first. If it's between your kids eating and their kids eating, they're going to make sure their kids eat first. So don't be surprised when they do something that doesn't benefit you if it was to feed their kids.
But also, you know, it's seeing parents who are selfish towards their own children. Like all of that exists, and I am continually surprised by it.
There's different levels of survival, right? I've experienced a lot of that, so I'm not surprised. I don't think everyone does it, but when someone does do it, I don't go, oh my God, I can't believe they did that.
I
just
can't
go,
fathom it.
I'm just like, oh, I guess you're one of those people.
Yeah, and I think that it's sitting in reality versus optimism. Like I hear that come from you often where you say, oh, you're very optimistic, but this is really what it's like. This is how most people are. This is how most things are. And it's that optimism that I have that I think also can translate to people being content in their misery or their ignorance or their discomfort of the chaos that we're living in without fully seeing what's really happening. And I think you like to be that person who literally like will say like, let's take a step back. Let's sit in these chairs. I'm going to give you a pill. You can take it if you want. But if you take it, this might make a little bit more sense to you. You're going to have to think though.
When it comes to certain things, it's like once you see something, you can't unsee it. Right. And so that's to my point earlier about like, I'm trying to give people conviction. It's like, once I've gotten you to the point where you're like, okay, I need to do something different. It's not so much that you've taken the pill, but you're acknowledging that there's a choice to be made.
Everything is a choice.
You're acknowledging that there's a choice. And I think a lot of people are, in order to be successful, I've said this on the pod before, like they just go on to autopilot. What did everyone else do to become successful? I'll just do that. That's the safe choice. The problem is, if everyone's doing the same thing, you basically have devalued or, debased that path. And we see that with college. Everyone went to college, and now there are innumerous TikToks of these 21-year-olds being like, this was a scam. I can't afford anything, and I got these student loans to pay off, and they told me to be in this industry. I need to be in one of these major cities where I can't afford to live. Like, it's a very overt scam now. Mm-hmm. But when Obama was out there telling everyone to go to college, or whoever was doing it before him, it was a scam then. It's just saturated now. There's no more benefit to having a college degree.
The way that my brain is approaching a lot, the way that my brain sees all of this is around parenting and the stuff that I do for my son that I've seen my friends and family do for their children, right? Because Anna and I are one of the last ones to have kids in our world, in our community. I literally, over the weekend, took Keon to a birthday party for a 5-year-old. Keon is not even 1.5. He had fun. I didn't. It was a heat wave outside. It was an outdoor party. He was running around. I was just exhausted. I did not have a good time. I did not get to hang out with 3 of my best friends who were there. I didn't even get to spend time with them. And I, the next day, made an announcement to my friends. And I said, we're not coming to any more birthday parties for the next 2 years. Our child is much younger than yours. And while he might enjoy it for 30 minutes to an hour, I'm miserable. He doesn't need it. We'll come over to your house to see your kids another time when their birthdays come around. And my friends were like, oh, but I get it. It is really hard. It's pretty horrible. It's pretty horrible the first few years with a kid taking them to these parties, but they have fun. And I kept saying, but I don't have fun. It's hell for me. And I almost got heat exhaustion chasing him around. It was just such an interesting conversation that I was having with them when they were all just like nodding and saying, yes, we know it's horrible. Yes, we know it's this. Yes, we know they don't really play with any kids yet. They really don't play with kids even until they're like a year and I hear that. I have that conversation so many times with people, but they are resolved to it being the default that we torture ourselves on our weekends at these events.
I'm just glad you came along to my side eventually.
I mean, it's such a small side of it. And I love birthday parties. I used to throw the best birthday parties ever when I was a kid. But I'm sorry, like a 16-month-old does not need to be going to these things.
There's 2 things that you said that I would like to point out.
Go for it.
Number 1, you used to love going to those parties because you didn't have a kid to chase around.
Exactly.
So it seemed like...
I'll still go without him.
No. That's not what I'm saying. So all the times that you were going, it seemed like that was a fun thing to do. And I showed up and I was like, I don't want to do that. That's not fun to me. Why not? Because not only is it a kid's birthday party, but none of these are my friends. These are all your friends.
Well, that's true.
These are all your friends. You have multiple decades of history with these people. Even if you only get to interact with them in spurts, it's still your friend circle. Now, because you have Keon there, you're like, I didn't even get to hang out with my friends. It's like the one thing has been taken away from you. Now it looks the way that it always looked to me.
The other piece of it, though, is that I'm lucky, right? Like I have a community of children that I can go to where I know their parents and have relationships with the parents. There are people doing this with strangers because their kids go to the same schools.
Yeah, that's not happening.
That's not happening.
Yeah, but even still, like what I was building towards there is, forget who it was, and I won't name drop, but one of the husbands was like, I can't believe you got out of that.
Oh yeah, they make that comment to me often when you're not there.
And I'm like, you could get out of it too.
Yeah.
But even they're like resigned to like, it is what it is. I'm like, just don't go.
Yeah, I think,
Like,
yeah,
you're a sovereign individual. They cannot force you into a car. They cannot. I mean, they could gag you and drive you there, but like
those are some strong kids.
just don't. And I think like this idea that like, oh, what are you gonna do? It is what it is. It's like you don't have to do a lot of things, and people have just pre-programmed into them like, I'm gonna do a bunch of stuff that I don't like because that's how granddad did it. That's how dad did it, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
And a lot of those things cost a lot of money. So you're spending money on things, you're spending your time on things that are this like default autopilot and not kind of taking a step back and talking to your community and saying like, we got to do something differently, or I'm not doing this, or like for our children, can we not do this? I know that there's like this nationwide discussion around like, please just don't give kids a cell phone, I think until 8 or something. They're just saying like collectively, can we all just,
8? That was what they negotiated
it might
to?
have, no, maybe it was 8th grade. It was something, it might have been 8th grade.
Until they can buy it themselves.
Yeah, but it was like one of the hard parts for parents is that their kids will come home and say, well, everyone else has it. So there's this like national discussion of like, can we all just be on the same page, make everyone's life easier and not give a smartphone? Give a cell phone, fine, but not a smartphone.
Let's remember that I believe it was Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both were like, oh, hell no.
Oh, these devices aren't in our home for our children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that the people making these things actively were like, my kids are not using them. Just like all these Boeing executives refuse to fly on Boeing planes.
Yeah.
Like literally, dude canceled his flight because it was a Boeing plane. These people don't care about you. Just because it's projected to you on television, just because it's marketed to you, just because it's made to seem normal, it's not normal. And I will admit that Bitcoin, I was already like, whatever you want to call it, anti. But now Bitcoin has made me so anti to so many things that I'm just like, no. And it's that simple. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I took Keon to the park yesterday morning, and this woman was out there with her daughter, and we're like chatting or whatever. And she eventually said, was like, oh, is he in daycare?
Yeah, that's always the question.
And I was like, nope. And just the way that I said it, she definitely was like, oh, like, why not? And I was like, I don't know those people. And you just saw the pause in her face, like, I mean, but it's daycare. And I'm like, I don't know them. They do not have my best interest at heart. They are just trying to get paid. That is it. And once you break everything down like that, you'll make a lot different decisions for your kids. I'm not handing, if you can, but you gotta look, we are lucky that we can make a certain set of decisions. But part of the reason that is because we're having children so late in life. And that is part of, in my opinion, a responsible adult doesn't bring life into the world if you can't actually raise it. It's that simple. If you don't have the means, if you need to go ask daycare to help you, that's the signal.
I know. You know,
that's the signal.
I feel differently about this in that we make a lot of choices with how we spend our money and where we allocate our money. And it seems like when it comes to childcare and schooling and lifestyle in general, those there are certain things that are defaults and there are certain things that end up being like an alternative decision. Whereas I think that the default should be we're going to navigate a lifestyle where our family can be together as much as possible and not create a lifestyle where we're separate often and maybe possibly are together in spurts, like on a family vacation or something like that. I think the design of society right now in America, it's expected that you're separated from your family often. Even like husband and wife, right? There's this constant joke of like, I can't be with my husband all day. I could never work with my husband. I could never do this. I could never do that. And like a lot of people make those comments to me about me and Ian because we're together pretty often. We do like when we launched the podcast, they were like, that's so, like, I couldn't do that with. And I'm like, what? This is your boo. This is your life partner. What do you mean you couldn't be with them all day? What does that mean?
Like, I get it, but you should be able to.
It shouldn't be a nightmare.
Like, not every day, but
Ian
like you should be able to spend a whole day together for sure.
And enjoy it. Not be like, ugh, we had to accomplish something together. It was a headache.
I feel like we've drifted a little away from Bitcoin at the moment.
We have drifted, but to bring it back, when I think about the people in my life who have said, can't Ian just buy it? I think that if this becomes a new way for us to sit down and talk with our friends and like gently orange pill them, get them to have Bitcoin, like what happens 6 months to a year from now? Do they change their positions on some of these other things? My theory is yes.
once you have Bitcoin, it starts to change you whether you realize it or not. And that's the really cool thing about it that you can't really explain to people.
Yeah, even my girlfriend's like, it's a lot of discussion about like clothes, purses, things to buy, like, oh, when the season changes, what are we getting? And like, I truly have no desire to buy new clothing right now for multiple reasons. In my mind, it's just so fascinating that the research that's done to buy a new pair of shoes or buy a purse, just transfer that a little over to.
Or learn all the names of athletes on a sports team.
Exactly. There's so much time and energy that you could be putting to something else. And, you know, I have had a couple of friends who have on the side said, hey, yeah, like we would love to learn more about Bitcoin. And I say, cool, pick a night. Ian and I will come over. Our kids will hang out and we can do it. But like, you know, once that actually happens and gets scheduled, you know, we'll see. But I'm hopeful. You know, the whole point of this podcast is for us to be able to teach our family and friends about Bitcoin. It has become bigger than I could have even imagined. But at our core, I think that's still our main priority is to orange pill as many people as we love as fast as possible. Thanks for listening to the show.
Now, let's get you set up on Fountain so you can start earning some money simply by listening to podcasts.
Go to fountain.fm to download the app.
Once your app is set up, search for Flirting with Bitcoin and hit follow.
Listen to our show and episodes from your other favorite podcasts to earn your first Satoshis, which are fractions of a Bitcoin.
And make sure to keep an eye out for our promoted episodes.
You can earn up to 100 Satoshis just for listening.
Pretty cool, huh?
You can use those sats you've earned to send us a boost, like a little payment with a message.
And I swear, we try to respond to everyone.
Every episode, we shout out the top boosters.
To support us or other podcasters with more sats, you can top up your Fountain wallet with a bank card or lightning transfer from apps like Strike or Cash App.
The easiest way to learn is to get started.
Now, you're all set up for podcasting 2.0.